The rain hammered down on Samuel Reed's shoulders as he guided his horse through the muddy trail outside Angel's Camp, California. When he heard a sound that made him pull back on the reins, a woman's broken sobbing cutting through the storm like a knife through canvas. It was late October in 1878, and the evening darkness came swift and unforgiving in these parts. Samuel had been riding back from delivering a herd of cattle to a ranch 20 miles north, his saddlebags heavy with payment, and his mind focused on getting home to his small cabin before the storm got worse. But that sound stopped him cold. He had been raised by a mother who taught him that turning away from someone in need was the surest way to lose your soul, and despite the exhaustion in his bones, he could not ignore those cries. He dismounted from his bay mare, boots sinking into the mud as he tied the reins to a nearby oak tree. The sobbing grew louder as he approached, and then he saw her, a young woman huddled beneath a rocky overhang, soaked to the bone, her dark hair plastered against her face. Her dress was torn in several places, once fine fabric now ruined by mud and rain. She clutched herself tightly, shaking violently from cold or fear or both. "Miss," Samuel called out gently, not wanting to startle her. "Miss, are you hurt?" The woman's head snapped up, and in the dim light he could see terror flash across her face. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the rock. "Stay away from me," she choked out through her tears. Samuel raised both hands, showing he meant no harm. "I am not going to hurt you. My name is Samuel Reed. I have a cabin about 3 miles from here. You cannot stay out in this storm. You will freeze to death before morning." "I would rather freeze than—" Her voice broke, and a fresh wave of sobs overtook her. Samuel's heart clenched. He had seen plenty of hardship in his 32 years, but something about this woman's despair cut straight through him. He slowly lowered himself to a crouch, still keeping his distance. "Whatever happened, whoever hurt you, I promise you are safe with me. I give you my word as a Christian man." The woman looked at him with eyes full of such profound distrust that Samuel wondered what horrors she had endured. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, though the shadows and her distress made it hard to be certain. Her hands were scraped raw, nails broken, as if she had been clawing at something or running through rough terrain. "Please," Samuel said quietly, "at least let me give you my coat. You are shaking so hard I can hear your teeth chattering from here." He slowly shrugged off his heavy oilskin coat and held it out toward her, taking a small step closer. The woman watched him like a cornered animal, but when he laid the coat on a rock within her reach and stepped back, she hesitated only a moment before snatching it and wrapping it around herself. "Thank you," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it over the sound of rain. "Can you tell me your name?" Samuel asked. She was silent for a long moment, then finally spoke. Olivia Harper. Miss Harper, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I cannot in good conscience leave you here. If you will not come with me, at least tell me, is someone pursuing you? Are you in immediate danger?" Fresh tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. "I do not know. I ran. I just ran and ran until I could not run anymore." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Who were you running from?" "My husband." The word came out like poison. "Though I suppose he is not really my husband anymore. I left him. I finally left him." The pieces began falling into place: the torn dress, the terror, the desperation. Samuel had encountered men who treated their wives as property to be used and abused, and it always made his blood boil. His own father had been gentle with his mother, treating her with respect and love, and Samuel could not fathom the kind of man who would drive a woman to flee into a storm. "He cannot hurt you now," Samuel said firmly. "And if he comes looking, he will have to go through me first. But right now, you need to get warm and dry before you catch your death. Will you trust me enough to let me take you somewhere safe?" Olivia studied his face for what felt like an eternity. Samuel made sure to keep his expression open and honest, letting her see he meant every word. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I think so." Samuel stood and offered his hand. Olivia stared at it for a moment before placing her cold, trembling fingers in his palm. He helped her to her feet, noting how she winced and favored her left ankle. Without asking permission, knowing time was of the essence, he scooped her up into his arms. She gasped and stiffened, but he spoke calmly. "Your ankle is hurt. This will be faster. I am going to put you on my horse, and then we are going to ride to my cabin. It is not much, but it is warm and dry." Olivia did not protest, though Samuel could feel the tension in her body. He carried her to where his mare waited patiently in the rain and carefully lifted Olivia onto the saddle. Then he swung up behind her, reaching around to gather the reins. He could feel her trembling against him. "Hold on," he said, and urged the mare into a steady walk through the storm. The ride to his cabin felt endless. Samuel kept one arm steady around Olivia's waist to keep her from sliding off, while she gripped the saddle horn with white-knuckled intensity. Neither spoke, the rain drumming its relentless rhythm around them. Samuel found himself hyper-aware of the woman in his arms, her vulnerability, her pain, the trust she was placing in him despite her fear. When the dim outline of his cabin finally appeared through the darkness and rain, Samuel felt relief wash over him. It was a modest structure, built with his own two hands over the course of a summer 5 years ago. One main room with a stone fireplace, a sleeping loft above, and a small lean-to stable attached to the side for his horses. Nothing fancy, but solid and weatherproof. He guided the mare directly into the stable, grateful to be out of the rain at last. His other horse, a gelding named Copper, nickered a greeting from his stall. Samuel dismounted first, then carefully helped Olivia down. She swayed on her feet, and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "Wait here just a moment while I tend to the mare," Samuel said. "Then we will get you inside and warm." He worked quickly, removing the saddle and bridle, rubbing down the mare with practiced efficiency. Olivia leaned against the stable wall, watching him with exhausted eyes. When he finished, he took her arm gently and guided her through the door that led directly from the stable into the cabin. Inside, the air was cold but blessedly dry. Samuel lit a lantern hanging near the door, casting warm light across the simple interior. A rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, a cooking stove in one corner, shelves lined with supplies, his bedroll in the loft above. He immediately went to the fireplace and began building a fire, coaxing flames from the kindling he always kept dry and ready. Olivia stood near the door, dripping water onto the floor, looking lost and uncertain. Samuel noticed and spoke without turning from the fire. "There is a blanket on the bed up in the loft. You should get out of those wet clothes before you catch pneumonia. I will turn around and tend the fire." "I promise I will not look." "I do not have anything else to wear," Olivia said quietly. Samuel stood and climbed the ladder to the loft, returning with not only the blanket but also one of his clean shirts and a pair of trousers. "These will be too big, but they are dry. You can roll up the sleeves and legs. I will turn around now." He made good on his promise, returning his attention to the fire, building it up until heat began radiating into the room. He heard the rustle of fabric behind him, the soft sound of wet cloth hitting the floor. Several minutes passed. "I am dressed," Olivia finally said. Samuel turned to find her wrapped in the blanket, his clothes billowing around her slender frame. Her dark hair hung in wet tangles past her shoulders. She looked impossibly young and fragile, and something protective stirred deep in his chest. "Come sit by the fire," he urged, dragging one of the chairs closer to the hearth. I will make you some coffee, and I have stew left from yesterday I can heat up. When did you last eat? Olivia sank into the chair, holding her hands toward the flames. I do not remember. Yesterday morning, maybe. Samuel busied himself at the stove, stoking it to life and setting a pot of coffee to brew. He ladled stew into a bowl and heated it, then brought it to her along with a spoon and a cup of water. Olivia looked at the food as if she could not quite believe it was real. Eat, Samuel encouraged. You need your strength. She took the bowl with trembling hands and ate slowly at first, then with increasing hunger, finishing every drop. Samuel poured her coffee once it was ready, adding a precious spoonful of sugar without asking. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup and closed her eyes, breathing in the steam. Thank you, she whispered. You do not need to thank me. I do. Olivia opened her eyes and looked at him directly for the first time, really looked at him. I never knew kindness existed, not like this. Not without expectation of something in return. The words hit Samuel like a physical blow. What kind of life had this woman lived that a simple act of decency seemed like a miracle? He settled into the other chair, keeping a respectful distance. Everyone deserves kindness, he said simply. It is not something that needs to be earned. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes again, but this time they seemed different, not born of terror but of something else, something softer and more painful. My husband used to say kindness was weakness. He said the world would chew up and spit out anyone foolish enough to show compassion. Your husband was wrong. He was wrong about many things. Olivia stared into the fire, though it took me 3 years to realize it. Samuel wanted to ask questions, to understand what had brought her to that desperate moment under the rocks in the storm, but he sensed pushing too hard would only cause her to retreat. Instead, he simply sat with her in companionable silence, letting the fire's warmth seep into both of them. After a while, Olivia spoke again, her voice distant. I met Daniel Harper in San Francisco in 1875. I was 19, working as a seamstress in a shop on Market Street. He was handsome and charming, and he made me feel special. My parents had died 2 years earlier from influenza, and I had no other family. I was so lonely. She paused, and Samuel waited patiently. He courted me for 3 months before proposing. Everyone said I was lucky to catch the attention of such a successful businessman. We married that summer, and at first, everything seemed perfect. But after the wedding, things changed. He became controlling, demanding to know where I was every moment. He did not like me having friends or going anywhere without him. Olivia's hands tightened around the coffee cup. Then came the criticism. Nothing I did was good enough. My cooking was terrible. My appearance was embarrassing. I was stupid, useless, a burden, and then... Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Then came the violence. Samuel's fists clenched involuntarily, but he kept his voice gentle. You do not have to tell me any more if it pains you. No, I want to. I need to say it out loud to make it real. Olivia looked at him with fierce determination. He hit me for the first time 6 months after we married. I had burned the roast, and he backhanded me across the face. He apologized afterward, cried, swore it would never happen again. But it did. Again and again. Each time was my fault, he said. I provoked him. I deserved it. A tear rolled down her cheek. I believed him. That is the terrible truth. For a long time I believed I deserved it. But 3 days ago, something changed. He came home drunk and angry about some business deal that had fallen through. He beat me worse than ever before, and as I lay on the floor bleeding, I heard him telling his business partner that he intended to kill me. He said I was more valuable to him dead than alive because of an insurance policy. Samuel's blood ran cold. Good God! I waited until he passed out drunk, then I ran. I took nothing but the clothes on my back. I walked and walked, managed to get a ride on a supply wagon heading toward the gold country. The driver let me off near Angel's camp and I started walking again. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. Then the storm hit and I could not go any further. She looked at Samuel with those haunted eyes. If you had not found me, I think I would have died out there tonight. Part of me almost wanted to. I was so tired, so scared. And then you appeared like some kind of angel, offering help without asking for anything. You are safe now, Samuel said firmly. And you are going to stay safe. You can stay here as long as you need to get your strength back and figure out what comes next. But I have no money, nothing to offer in return. I do not want anything in return. Samuel leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. Miss Harper, I am not a wealthy man. I have this cabin, my horses, and I work various jobs around the territory, cattle driving, ranch work, whatever needs doing. But I have enough. Food, shelter, warmth, and I will not turn away someone in need. Olivia's face crumpled, and she began to cry again, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from her very soul. Samuel moved without thinking, kneeling beside her chair and letting her cry into his shoulder. He did not try to quiet her or tell her everything would be fine. He simply held her, offering the steady presence of someone who cared, and let her release what must have been years of pent-up anguish. When the storm of tears finally subsided, Olivia pulled back, embarrassed. I am sorry. I have soaked your shirt. It will dry. Samuel stood and retrieved a clean cloth from a shelf, handing it to her so she could wipe her face. You have been through more than anyone should have to endure. You are allowed to cry. I feel so weak. Crying does not make you weak. Surviving what you survived, that makes you strong. Leaving took more courage than staying. Olivia looked at him with something like wonder. How can you be so kind? You know nothing about me. For all you know, I could be lying. Maybe I am a thief or a criminal. Samuel smiled, the first real smile he had shown that evening. Are you? No. Then there is nothing to worry about. He glanced at the window where rain still lashed against the glass. The storm shows no sign of stopping. You should rest. Take the bed in the loft. I will sleep down here by the fire. I cannot take your bed. You can and you will. You are injured and exhausted. Samuel's tone left no room for argument. We can sort everything else out in the morning. Too tired to protest further, Olivia climbed the ladder to the loft. Samuel heard the creak of the rope bed as she settled in, then silence. He added another log to the fire and spread his bedroll on the floor nearby, lying down fully clothed. Despite his own exhaustion, sleep eluded him for a long time. His mind kept returning to Olivia's words. I never knew kindness existed. What kind of world had she lived in where basic human decency seemed like a foreign concept? And what kind of man was he, really, to have inspired such trust in someone who had every reason to trust no one? Samuel knew he was just an ordinary person doing what his conscience demanded. But perhaps that was exactly what Olivia needed, someone ordinary and decent, instead of the monster she had been living with. The rain continued its steady percussion on the roof, and eventually, Samuel drifted into a light sleep, his dreams troubled by visions of dark-haired women fleeing through storms. When he woke the next morning, weak sunlight was streaming through the windows. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed clean and smelling of wet earth. Samuel stood and stretched, his back protesting the night on the hard floor. He checked the loft and saw Olivia still sleeping, curled into a small ball under the blankets. Dark circles shadowed her eyes even in sleep, and he noticed a bruise on her jaw that was clearer in the daylight. Moving quietly, Samuel built up the fire and started coffee. He went out to the stable to tend his horses, mucking stalls and distributing feed and fresh water. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of California autumn day that made everything seem full of possibility. When he returned to the cabin, Olivia was climbing down from the loft, moving stiffly. "Good morning," Samuel greeted. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," Olivia admitted. She looked almost surprised by this fact. "I actually felt safe, because you are safe." Samuel poured coffee for both of them. "How is your ankle this morning?" Olivia tested her weight on it gingerly. "Better. Still sore, but I do not think it is seriously injured, just twisted." "Good. Sit down and I will make breakfast." As Samuel prepared eggs and bacon, Olivia watched him with curious eyes. "Do you live here alone?" she asked. "I do. Have for the past 5 years since I finished building the place." "No wife, no family." Samuel cracked eggs into the pan. "No wife. My parents passed on about 10 years ago, both from fever. I had a younger sister, Margaret, but she married a shopkeeper in Sacramento. We write when we can, but I have not seen her in over a year." "You get lonely?" The question was asked with such genuine interest that Samuel considered it carefully before answering. "Sometimes. But I have learned there is a difference between being alone and being lonely. I have my work, my horses, friends in town. It is a good life, even if it is a quiet one." He served the food, and they ate together at the small table. Olivia was still wearing his oversized clothes, her hair now dried into soft waves around her face. In the morning light, Samuel could see she was quite beautiful, with fine features and expressive brown eyes that must have once sparkled before life dimmed them. "What will you do?" Samuel asked gently. "Not today or tomorrow, but eventually. Have you thought about it?" Olivia set down her fork, her expression troubled. "I do not know. I cannot go back to San Francisco. Daniel will look for me there. I have no money, no possessions. I suppose I could try to find work somewhere, but I would need references, and I cannot exactly ask my husband to provide those." "Can you still sew? You said you worked as a seamstress before." "Yes. It was the one thing Daniel actually approved of because I could mend his clothes and make curtains for the house." Samuel leaned back in his chair, thinking. Angel's Camp is not a big town, but there are people there who might need sewing done. The general store owner, Mrs. Patterson, is always complaining about the lack of good seamstresses in the area. Most women do their own mending, but there are enough miners and businessmen around who need someone skilled with a needle. Hope flickered across Olivia's face, then faded. "But where would I live? How would I explain who I am and where I came from, one problem at a time?" Samuel stood and began clearing the dishes. "First, you need to recover your strength. Stay here, rest, let your ankle heal properly. In the meantime, we can figure out the rest." "Why are you doing this?" Olivia asked, frustration creeping into her voice. "Why are you being so kind to a stranger?" Samuel met her eyes steadily. "Because it is the right thing to do. Because you needed help and I could provide it. Because in this hard world we all need someone to be kind to us now and then. Is that so difficult to believe?" "Yes," Olivia said honestly. "In my experience, everyone wants something. Then I suppose your experience has been with the wrong people." Samuel dried the dishes and put them away. "I need to ride into town today to pick up some supplies and check on a job prospect. You can come with me if you feel up to it, or you can stay here and rest. The choice is yours." Olivia considered. "Will people ask questions? Probably. It is a small town." "Then I should stay here. I do not want to cause you trouble." Samuel shook his head. "You are not causing me trouble. But if you would be more comfortable staying, that is fine. I will be back before dark. There is food in the pantry if you get hungry, and please make yourself at home. The door locks from the inside. Use it if it makes you feel safer." He gathered what he needed for the trip into town, including the payment from his cattle drive that needed to be deposited. Before leaving, he paused at the door. "Olivia, I mean what I said. You are safe here. I do not expect anything from you except maybe a willingness to heal." She looked at him with those wounded eyes and nodded. "Thank you, Samuel." The ride into Angel's camp took about 45 minutes through the rolling foothills. The town had grown up around the gold mining operations, though by 1878 the glory days were fading. Still, there remained enough activity to keep the place alive: miners, merchants, ranchers, and all the supporting businesses they required. Samuel's first stop was the bank, where he deposited most of his earnings, keeping only what he needed for supplies. Then he headed to the general store, where he found Mrs. Patterson behind the counter, a formidable woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. "Samuel Reed," she greeted. "I heard you were up north with a cattle drive. Get back safe, I see." "Yes, madam. Just returned last night." Samuel began gathering supplies: coffee, flour, sugar, beans, a few other staples. "Mrs. Patterson, may I ask you something?" "You just did, but go ahead and ask another." Samuel smiled at her familiar brusqueness. "Are you still looking for someone who can do sewing work?" "I recall you mentioning it a few weeks back." Mrs. Patterson's eyes lit up. "Am I ever? Just yesterday, Judge Morrison was in here complaining his wife is too busy with their new baby to mend his shirts, and he is tired of looking like a ragamuffin in court. Why do you ask?" "You taken up needlework in your spare time?" "No, madam, but I might know someone who could help. A skilled seamstress." "Would there be enough work in town to support someone doing that?" "More than enough. Half the miners around here have torn clothes they are too clumsy to fix themselves, and the few women in town are overwhelmed with their own work. If your friend is any good, she could make a decent living at it." Mrs. Patterson leaned forward conspiratorially. "This friend she looking to settle in Angel's camp?" "Possibly. She is new to the area." "Married?" "Widowed," Samuel said, the lie coming easier than he expected. "Better a widow than a runaway wife. Fewer questions, less danger of Daniel Harper tracking Olivia down." "Well, tell your friend to come see me when she is ready. I can spread the word, maybe even let her set up in the back room here a few days a week if we work out an arrangement." "That is generous of you." Mrs. Patterson waved a hand dismissively. "Not generous, practical. If she does good work, I will take a small commission for hosting her and passing along customers. We both benefit." Samuel paid for his supplies and left feeling more optimistic than he had any right to be. Perhaps there was a way forward for Olivia, a path that would allow her to rebuild her life without fear. The thought made him unaccountably happy. His next stop was the ranch of Thomas Sullivan, who had mentioned possibly needing help with a building project. Samuel found the rancher in his barn examining a horse's hoof. "Samuel, good timing," Thomas greeted. "That offer I made still stands if you are interested. I need a new bunkhouse built before winter. 4 walls, solid roof, bunks for 8 men. Can you do it?" "I can." "When do you need it finished?" "End of November if possible. I will provide all materials and pay you $50 plus meals while you work." It was good money for 6 weeks of work, and it would keep Samuel close to home, which suddenly seemed important. "You have a deal." They shook on it and discussed details, agreeing Samuel would start the following Monday. As he rode back toward his cabin, Samuel found himself thinking about Olivia, wondering how she was spending her day, whether she felt comfortable in his home. He had never brought a woman to his cabin before, had never really courted anyone seriously. Though there had been a girl once, years ago, who had married someone else when Samuel decided to move to the gold country. It struck him that he enjoyed having Olivia there, like the thought of returning home to find someone waiting. The realization unsettled him. She was a woman fleeing a terrible situation, vulnerable and in need of help. The last thing she needed was her benefactor developing inappropriate feelings. Samuel firmly told himself to think of her as someone under his protection, nothing more. When he arrived back at the cabin, the afternoon sun was starting its descent toward the western hills. He put his horse away and entered the cabin to find it transformed. The place had been cleaned from top to bottom, floor swept, dishes washed and put away, his clothes folded neatly. A pot simmered on the stove, filling the air with the savory smell of stew. Olivia stood at the stove, stirring the pot. She had washed her hair, and it fell in clean waves down her back. She had also done something to alter his spare shirt so it fit her better, taking it in at the waist with neat stitches. "You did not have to do all this," Samuel said, setting down his supplies. Olivia turned, a slight smile on her face, the first real smile he had seen from her. "I wanted to. You have been so kind, and I felt useless just sitting here. I found vegetables in your garden and made stew. I hope you do not mind that I used your needle and thread on the shirt." "Mind? You made it actually look like it fits a human being instead of a scarecrow. That is impressive work." Samuel examined the stitching more closely. "Mrs. Patterson was right, you are skilled." "Mrs. Patterson?" Samuel told her about his conversation at the general store about the potential work opportunity. As he spoke, Olivia's eyes grew wider with each detail. "She would really help me?" Olivia asked when he finished. "Even though she does not know me?" "She knows I would not recommend someone who was not skilled. And she is a businesswoman. If you can provide a service people need, she will help because it benefits her too. That is how things work here. People help each other because we all prosper when everyone does their part." Olivia sat down slowly as if her legs would not support her. "I could actually start over, build a real life." "You can and you will." Samuel sat across from her. "But there is something we need to discuss. I told Mrs. Patterson you were widowed. It seemed simpler than the truth and safer. If your husband is looking for you, it is better if you are legally dead to him. But I am still married, at least in the eyes of the law and the church. That is complicated, I know, but out here, people generally do not ask too many questions about your past. If you say you are a widow, most will take you at your word. As for the legal and religious aspects, you would probably need to consult a lawyer and a minister eventually. But for now, the most important thing is keeping you safe." Olivia nodded slowly. "I do not even feel married." "That implies a partnership, a bond. What I had with Daniel was captivity." They ate the stew together, and Samuel was impressed by how good it was. They talked through the evening about practical matters, what name Olivia should use. Her maiden name, Olivia Hart, seemed safest. When she should go into town to meet Mrs. Patterson, how to explain her presence in Samuel's life without damaging either of their reputations. "People will assume we are courting," Olivia said bluntly. "A man and woman living together, unmarried, it will cause talk. Let them talk. I know the truth, you know the truth, and God knows the truth. That is enough. It could hurt your reputation." Samuel shrugged. "I am a drifter who does odd jobs and lives alone in the woods. I am not exactly society's most respected member anyway. But if it bothers you, we can tell people you are my cousin, recently widowed and come west to start fresh." "A cousin," Olivia considered this. "That could work. It would explain why you are helping me and why I am staying here. Then that is what we will tell people." As darkness fell, they settled into a comfortable routine. Samuel worked on mending some tack while Olivia examined his clothing and made a list of repairs needed. The silence between them was peaceful rather than awkward, both lost in their own thoughts yet aware of the other's presence. When Olivia finally retired to the loft for the night, Samuel found himself disappointed to see her go. He was beginning to genuinely enjoy her company. The way she spoke thoughtfully before responding to questions, the small gestures of care she showed in cleaning and cooking, the resilience that shone through her trauma. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Samuel began work on the Sullivan bunkhouse, riding out each morning and returning in the late afternoon. Olivia spent her days recovering her strength, tending the cabin and garden and practicing her sewing skills. Her ankle healed quickly, and the bruises faded from her face, revealing the true loveliness that had been hidden beneath injury and fear. 3 weeks after Samuel had found her in the storm, he brought her into town to meet Mrs. Patterson. Olivia wore her own dress, which she had carefully cleaned and repaired along with a borrowed bonnet. She was nervous during the ride, hands twisted in her lap. "What if she does not like me?" Olivia fretted. "What if she can tell I am running from something? She will like you." And everyone is running from something. That is why most people came west in the first place. Mrs. Patterson took to Olivia immediately. After examining several samples of her work, the older woman nodded approvingly. "You have a fine hand with a needle, Mrs. Hart. When can you start?" "Whenever you need me." "How about tomorrow? I already have 3 people asking for mending work, and Judge Morrison will be in Thursday looking for someone to make his wife some new dresses. She is particular about her clothes, but if you can satisfy her, you will have more work than you can handle." They worked out an arrangement where Olivia would come to town 3 days a week, working in the back room of the general store. Mrs. Patterson would take a 20% commission on all work, provide materials at cost, and help advertise Olivia's services. It was more than fair. Walking back to where Samuel waited with the horses, Olivia's entire bearing had changed. She stood straighter, moved with more confidence. "She actually wants my work," she said wonderingly. "I have a job, a real job. You have a skill people need. Of course she wants your work." Samuel helped her mount her horse, a gentle mare he had borrowed from Thomas Sullivan. "This is just the beginning, Olivia. You are going to build a good life here. Because of you, none of this would be possible without you." Samuel felt uncomfortable with her gratitude, though he understood it. "You would have found a way. You are stronger than you think." As they rode back toward the cabin, Olivia was quiet, but it was a thoughtful silence rather than a troubled one. Samuel found himself watching her more than the trail, noting how the afternoon sun brought out auburn highlights in her dark hair, how her eyes were beginning to regain their sparkle. She was healing, and he felt privileged to witness the transformation. Over the following months, Olivia's sewing business flourished. Word spread quickly about the skilled seamstress at Patterson's general store, and soon she was taking appointments weeks in advance. She made dresses for the judge's wife, who recommended her to all her friends. She mended endless piles of work clothes for minors. She even created a beautiful christening gown for a new baby in town, work so exquisite that the mother cried when she saw it. Olivia's success meant she started earning real money. By December, she approached Samuel with a serious expression. "I need to talk to you about payment for staying in your home." They were sitting by the fire after supper, both working, Samuel carving a new chair leg, Olivia hemming curtains for one of her customers. The domestic scene felt so natural now that Samuel sometimes forgot how strange it would look to an outsider. "We have discussed this," Samuel said without looking up from his carving. "You do not owe me anything, but I do. You have provided food and shelter for nearly 2 months. I have been saving most of what I earn, and I want to contribute to the household expenses." Samuel set down his carving knife and looked at her. "If it makes you feel better, you can buy supplies when they are needed, but I do not want rent from you, Olivia. This is your home as much as mine now." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Olivia's eyes widened slightly. My home. Where else would it be? You live here. I suppose I assumed this was temporary, that eventually I would need to find other arrangements. Is that what you want? Samuel asked, and realized he was holding his breath waiting for her answer. Olivia looked around the cabin at the curtains she had made, the cleaned and organized shelves, the touches of care and comfort she had added over the weeks. No, she said softly. I like it here. I feel safe here with you. Something warm unfurled in Samuel's chest. Then stay. For as long as you want. Their eyes met across the firelight, and Samuel saw something shift in Olivia's expression. The fear that had haunted her gaze when they first met was gone, replaced by something softer, more complex. She looked away first, returning her attention to her sewing, but Samuel caught the faint blush on her cheeks. It was in that moment Samuel admitted to himself what he had been trying to deny for weeks. He was falling in love with Olivia Hart. The realization terrified him. She was still healing from her previous marriage, still learning to trust again. The last thing she needed was him complicating matters with romantic feelings. And yet, he could not help the way his heart lifted every time she smiled, the way he found himself hurrying home each day just to see her, the way her opinion mattered more to him than anyone else's. Samuel resolved to keep his feelings to himself. Olivia's recovery and happiness were more important than his romantic inclinations. He would be her friend, her protector, her supporter, and that would have to be enough. But keeping that resolution proved difficult as the weeks passed. The more time they spent together, the deeper his feelings grew. He noticed everything about her: the way she hummed while cooking, the crease that appeared between her eyebrows when she was concentrating on difficult stitching, the sound of her laughter when he managed to coax it out of her with a joke or funny story. Christmas approached, and Angel's Camp prepared for celebration despite the hard times. Samuel had never been particularly festive, but Olivia's excitement was infectious. She made decorations from natural materials, filling the cabin with greenery and red berries. She baked cookies using precious sugar and butter, creating elaborate designs with icing. On Christmas Eve, Samuel surprised her with a gift he had been working on in secret: a beautiful sewing box he had built from walnut wood, with fitted compartments for thread and notions, and her initials carved into the lid. Olivia's hands trembled as she accepted it. Samuel, this is too much. You have already given me so much. It is a practical gift, Samuel insisted, though they both knew it was far more than that. The hours he had spent crafting and carving the box spoke of devotion that went beyond mere friendship. You needed a proper place to store your supplies. It is beautiful. Olivia ran her fingers over the smooth wood, tracing her carved initials. Thank you, but now I feel terrible because I only made you this. She handed him a package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a shirt she had made, cut to fit his frame perfectly, with careful details in the stitching. It was finer than any shirt Samuel had ever owned. You made this. He held it up, awed by the craftsmanship. I used fabric from a dress I will never wear again. It seemed fitting, taking something from my old life and making it into something new and good. Olivia smiled. Do you like it? Like it? It is the finest gift I have ever received. Samuel meant every word. He immediately went to the loft to change into the shirt, and when he came back down, Olivia's eyes lit up with pleasure. It fits perfectly, she said with satisfaction. They spent Christmas Day quietly, cooking a special meal together and exchanging stories of past holidays. Olivia told him about Christmases with her parents before they died, when things were still good and hopeful. Samuel shared memories of his mother's terrible fruitcake that everyone pretended to love. As evening fell and they sat by the fire, full of good food and comfortable in each other's presence, Samuel felt a contentment he had never known before. This was what happiness felt like, not grand adventures or wealth, but simple moments with someone who mattered. "This has been the best Christmas I have had in years," Olivia said, echoing his thoughts. "Maybe the best ever, really, even without a big celebration or fancy presents, especially without those things." She looked at him with warm eyes. "I spent too many Christmases trying to please Daniel, walking on eggshells, hoping he would not find some reason to ruin the day. This was peaceful, real." Samuel wanted to reach across the space between their chairs and take her hand, wanted to tell her how much she had come to mean to him. But he held back, still uncertain if his feelings would be welcome or unwanted pressure. The new year of 1879 arrived cold and clear. Olivia's business continued to thrive, and Samuel took on various jobs around the territory: fence building, carpentry, occasional work with cattle. They fell into a comfortable domestic partnership, sharing meals and chores and conversation. But something was changing between them, a tension building like clouds before a storm. Samuel caught Olivia watching him sometimes when she thought he was not paying attention. Their hands would brush accidentally, and neither would pull away immediately. Conversations would trail off mid-sentence as they got lost in each other's eyes. It was Mrs. Patterson who finally said what everyone in town was thinking. Samuel had come to collect Olivia after her workday one February afternoon when the shopkeeper pulled him aside. "That girl is in love with you," Mrs. Patterson said bluntly. Samuel felt heat rise in his face. "We are just friends." "Friends, my foot. I have eyes." Samuel read. "I see how she lights up when you walk in. I see how she talks about you to the other women. And I see how you look at her when you think no one is watching." Mrs. Patterson poked him in the chest with one finger. "Life is short and uncertain. If you care for her, you should tell her before someone else snaps her up. There are 3 men in town already asking after her, wondering if the lovely widow would consider remarrying." The thought of Olivia with another man sent a spike of jealousy through Samuel. "Who?" he demanded. "Mrs. Patterson's eyes twinkled knowingly. "Does it matter? The point is, you are not the only one who has noticed what a treasure she is. So stop wasting time being noble or scared or whatever is holding you back." That evening, as they rode back to the cabin, Samuel could not stop thinking about Mrs. Patterson's words. The idea that Olivia might have feelings for him seemed too good to be true, yet there had been signs. The way she always made his favorite foods, how she had started calling him by just Samuel instead of Mr. Reed, the softness in her eyes when they talked late into the night. They were preparing supper together when Samuel found himself watching her dice vegetables, marveling at how natural it felt to share this space with her, how empty the cabin would feel if she ever left. "Olivia," he said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. She looked up. "Yes." Samuel opened his mouth, then closed it again. What was he doing? Was he really about to risk the comfortable friendship they had built? But Mrs. Patterson's words echoed in his mind. "Life is short and uncertain." "I need to tell you something," he began. "And I understand if it changes things between us, but I cannot keep it to myself any longer." Olivia set down her knife, giving him her full attention. "What is it?" "These past few months, having you here, getting to know you, it has meant more to me than I can properly express. You have become the best part of my days. When I am out working, I find myself thinking about coming home to you. When something happens, you are the first person I want to tell. And I have tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it was inappropriate given everything you have been through. But Samuel," Olivia interrupted, and he stopped, afraid of what she might say. But when he met her eyes, she was smiling. "Do you remember what I said the night we met? That I never knew kindness existed?" "Yes. You showed me kindness, Samuel, real kindness with no ulterior motives. And slowly, you showed me that I could trust again, that not all men are like Daniel. You made me feel safe and valued and cared for. And somewhere along the way, I realized I had fallen in love with you. Samuel's heart stopped. You love me, Olivia nodded, tears gathering in her eyes, but happy tears this time. I do. I have been terrified to say it because I thought you only saw me as someone you had to protect. I thought I was just a responsibility to you. A responsibility. Samuel crossed the space between them in 2 strides, taking her hands in his. Olivia, you are so much more than that. You are the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing on my mind at night. I love you. I am in love with you. The words, once spoken, seemed to fill the cabin with light. Olivia's face broke into a brilliant smile, and Samuel found himself smiling back just as widely. He cupped her face gently with one hand, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But instead, she leaned into his touch. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly, "please." Their first kiss was gentle and tentative, both of them aware of the significance of the moment. Olivia's lips were soft beneath his, and when she sighed and leaned closer, Samuel wrapped his arms around her, holding her securely. The kiss deepened, conveying months of unspoken feelings and growing affection. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Olivia rested her head against Samuel's chest, and he held her close, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. "I never thought I could feel this way," Olivia whispered. "After Daniel, I thought I was broken, that I would never be able to trust a man enough to love again." "You are not broken. You were hurt, but you healed. You are the strongest person I know." They stood like that for a long moment, simply holding each other. Then Olivia pulled back just enough to look up at him. "What happens now?" "Now," Samuel smiled. "Now we figure it out together. There are complications, I know. Legally, you are still married to Daniel, even though you have not seen him in months. We will need to address that eventually. But for now, can we just be together? Openly acknowledge what we mean to each other. I would like that." Olivia's expression grew serious. "But Samuel, I need you to understand something. I care for you deeply and I want to build a life with you. But I cannot marry again until I am truly free of Daniel, and even then I will need time. The thought of being someone's wife again, even yours, it frightens me. Then we will not marry. Not until you are ready, not until you are free in every way that matters." Samuel stroked her hair gently. "I am not going anywhere, Olivia. We have all the time in the world." The relief in her eyes was palpable. "You really mean that? Every word?" That night, they talked for hours about their future. Samuel made it clear he had no desire to control or possess Olivia the way Daniel had. He wanted a true partnership where they made decisions together and respected each other's autonomy. He admired her independence and had no intention of diminishing it. Olivia, in turn, shared her fears and hopes. She wanted to continue her sewing work because it gave her pride and purpose. She wanted to eventually confront the legal complications of her marriage, though the thought terrified her. And she wanted time to simply be herself, to discover who she was outside of being someone's victim or someone's wife. "I just want to be Olivia for a while," she said. "Not Mrs. Harper or even eventually Mrs. Reed, just me." "Then that is exactly what you will be," Samuel promised. "And I will do everything I can to support you in that." The shift in their relationship from friends to something more brought a new energy to the cabin. They were more openly affectionate now, holding hands while walking, stealing kisses while cooking, sitting close together by the fire. Samuel would come home from work to find Olivia waiting with a smile that made his heart race. Olivia would touch his shoulder as she passed, simple gestures that spoke volumes. The people of Angel's Camp noticed the change, of course. Mrs. Patterson gave Samuel a satisfied smirk the next time he came to collect Olivia. "Took you long enough," was all she said, but her tone was approving. Judge Morrison, who had become a regular customer of Olivia's work, stopped Samuel on the street one day in March. "I hear congratulations are in order," he said. "You and your cousin have realized you are not actually related." Samuel had the grace to look sheepish. "We never actually claimed to be cousins. People just assumed." "Well, I am happy for you both. Mrs. Hart is a fine woman and you are a good man. However, I feel obliged to tell you something." The judge's expression grew serious. "There is a legal matter you should be aware of. Mrs. Hart mentioned she was widowed, but I recently heard through my network of a man named Daniel Harper making inquiries about a missing wife. A man from San Francisco." Samuel's blood ran cold. "When?" "The inquiries started about a month ago. He hired a detective to search the gold country. So far, the search has focused north of here, around Nevada City and Grass Valley. But it is only a matter of time before they work their way south." "What do you suggest we do?" Judge Morrison stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Mrs. Hart should file for legal separation on the grounds of cruelty and threat to her life. It is not a divorce, the church does not allow that, but it would legally protect her property and person from her husband's claims. I can help with the paperwork, and there are precedents for such cases, especially when abuse is documented. But we do not have documentation. It is her word against his. I know a doctor in Sacramento who specializes in these cases. If Mrs. Hart is willing to testify about the abuse, and if I can arrange for character witnesses who can attest to her fear and the evidence of injuries when you found her, we might build a strong enough case." Samuel nodded slowly. "I will talk to her. Thank you for the warning." That evening, Samuel broke the news to Olivia as gently as he could. He watched the color drain from her face as he explained about Daniel's search. "He is looking for me," she whispered. "I knew he would, but I hoped maybe he had given up. Maybe he had just let me go." Men like Daniel Harper do not let go. They see their wives as property. Samuel took her hands. "But we are not going to let him hurt you. Judge Morrison thinks we should pursue a legal separation. It would not be a divorce, but it would give you legal protection." Olivia's hands trembled in his. "That means testifying about everything, standing up in front of people and describing what he did to me." "I know, and if you cannot do it, I will understand. We will find another way." But Olivia straightened her shoulders and Samuel saw the steel beneath her softness. "No, I will do it. I am tired of running, tired of hiding. If I have to face Daniel again to be truly free, then that is what I will do. You will not face him alone. I will be right there with you." Over the following weeks, Judge Morrison prepared their case. He traveled to Sacramento and returned with a doctor who interviewed Olivia extensively about the abuse she had suffered. The doctor documented her testimony and explained he had seen countless similar cases, that he would gladly testify on her behalf. Mrs. Patterson agreed to provide a character witness statement, as did several of Olivia's customers. Thomas Sullivan, who had gotten to know both Samuel and Olivia over the months, offered to testify about Samuel finding her in the storm and the condition she was in. "That girl has grit," Thomas told Samuel. "Standing up like this takes real courage. You picked a good one." The hearing was set for early May in Sacramento, where Daniel Harper had been summoned to respond to the separation petition. Samuel took the time off work, and they made the journey together, staying in a modest hotel near the courthouse. Olivia was so nervous the night before the hearing that she could barely eat. "What if the judge does not believe me?" she asked as they sat in the hotel restaurant. "What if Daniel is more convincing? Then we will appeal, and keep appealing. But Olivia, you have truth on your side, and you have people who believe in you." Samuel reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you are already free. He cannot take that away from you." The courthouse the next morning was imposing, with high ceilings and stern portraits of past judges on the walls. Samuel sat in the gallery behind Olivia and Judge Morrison at the front table. Across the aisle sat Daniel Harper with his lawyer. Seeing the man who had hurt Olivia made Samuel's hands clench into fists. Daniel Harper was about 40, well-dressed and well-groomed, with the kind of smooth confidence that came from privilege and power. He looked respectable and civilized, exactly the kind of man who could hide cruelty behind a handsome face. Harper's eyes found Olivia, and Samuel saw her shrink slightly in her seat. Samuel wanted to go to her, to put himself between her and that predatory gaze, but he forced himself to stay seated and simply project calm support. The presiding judge, a stern-faced woman named Judge Catherine Williamson, called the hearing to order. She had a reputation for being fair but exacting, and Samuel prayed she would see through Harper's facade. Judge Morrison presented their case methodically. He called the doctor from Sacramento, who testified about the patterns of abuse he had seen in hundreds of cases, and how Olivia's testimony fit those patterns perfectly. He called Thomas Sullivan, who described finding Samuel returning home with a terrified, injured woman in the storm. He called Mrs. Patterson, who spoke of Olivia's fearfulness in the early days and her gradual healing. Then it was Olivia's turn to testify. Samuel watched her walk to the stand, spine straight despite her fear. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Under Judge Morrison's gentle questioning, Olivia described her marriage to Daniel Harper. She spoke of the gradual escalation of control and criticism, of the first time he hit her, of the years of violence that followed. Her voice shook, but never broke as she detailed specific incidents: the time he broke her arm and told the doctor she had fallen down the stairs, the time he choked her until she passed out, the final night when she overheard him planning her murder. Through it all, Samuel kept his eyes on her, silently willing her to feel his support. Olivia never looked at her husband during her testimony, instead focusing on Judge Morrison or the presiding judge. When it was Daniel Harper's lawyer's turn to cross-examine, he tried to paint Olivia as a hysterical, ungrateful wife who had abandoned her husband because she wanted to pursue a relationship with Samuel. He insinuated she had fabricated the abuse claims to justify her infidelity. But Olivia held firm. "I met Samuel Reed after I left my husband," she stated clearly, "and I left because I feared for my life, not because of any other man." "Is it not true," Harper's lawyer pressed, "that you are currently living with Mr. Reed in his home unwed? That you have been cohabitating for over 6 months? Mr. Reed offered me shelter when I had nowhere else to go. He has been nothing but respectful and honorable. Yet you claim to have no romantic relationship." Olivia lifted her chin. "I said no such thing. Mr. Reed and I do have feelings for each other, but those feelings developed after I left my husband, and they do not change the truth of why I left. I left because Daniel Harper beat me regularly and threatened to kill me. Everything else is irrelevant to that fact." Judge Williamson intervened. "I agree. The question of Mrs. Harper's current relationship is not germane to the question of whether grounds exist for legal separation. Move on, counselor." Finally, it was Daniel Harper's turn to testify. He presented himself as a wronged husband, bewildered by his wife's claims. He admitted he had a temper but denied ever seriously hurting Olivia. The broken arm, an accident during an argument when she fell. The choking. He had never choked her. She was being dramatic about a moment when he grabbed her shoulders during a heated discussion. As for the alleged murder plot, Harper claimed Olivia must have misunderstood a conversation about life insurance. He had been discussing a potential business problem with his partner, not plotting to harm his wife. He was smooth and believable, and Samuel felt dread creeping in. Would the judge believe this polished, respectable businessman over Olivia? But Judge Morrison had one more card to play. He called Samuel to the stand. Samuel swore his oath and sat, trying to project calm confidence. Judge Morrison asked him to describe the night he found Olivia. "It was October 28th, 1878, Samuel began. "I was riding home through a storm when I heard crying. I found Mrs. Harper, though I did not know her name, then huddled under a rock overhang. She was soaking wet, terrified, injured. Her dress was torn, her hands were bloody from crawling over rough ground, and she had visible bruises on her face and arms. When I tried to help her, she begged me to stay away, terrified I would hurt her. What convinced you she was telling the truth about fleeing from danger?" Judge Morrison asked. "The look in her eyes," Samuel said simply. "I have seen frightened animals, and she had that same wild terror. That is not something you can fake. And over the following months as she healed, I watched her flinch at sudden movements, saw her panic at loud noises. I saw a woman learning to trust again after having trust betrayed in the worst possible way." Harper's lawyer tried to suggest Samuel had ulterior motives for supporting Olivia's claims, that he wanted to steal another man's wife. But Samuel met his gaze steadily. "I want Olivia to be safe and happy. If that means she eventually chooses to be with me, I will be grateful. If it means she chooses a different path, I will accept that. My concern is for her well-being, not possession of her." After closing arguments, Judge Williamson announced she would issue her decision within the week. The wait was agonizing. Samuel and Olivia remained in Sacramento, neither wanting to travel home only to have to return. They spent their days walking along the river, talking about everything and nothing, trying not to focus on the uncertainty hanging over them. 5 days later, they returned to the courthouse. Judge Williamson read her decision in a firm, clear voice. "Having reviewed all testimony and evidence, this court finds that Mrs. Olivia Harper has proven by preponderance of the evidence that she suffered extreme cruelty at the hands of her husband, Daniel Harper. The testimony of medical experts, character witnesses, and Mr. Reed's first-hand account of her condition when he found her all corroborate Mrs. Harper's claims. In contrast, Mr. Harper's denials are self-serving and contradict the substantial evidence presented." Samuel felt Olivia's hand tighten in his as the judge continued. "Therefore, this court grants a legal separation on the grounds of cruelty. Mrs. Harper is hereby legally separated from Mr. Harper and will be recognized as a separate legal entity with full control over her own property and person. Mr. Harper is ordered to stay at least 500 yards away from Mrs. Harper at all times and is enjoined from any contact whatsoever. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." The judge's gavel came down with a decisive crack. Olivia began to cry, tears of relief streaming down her face. Samuel pulled her into his arms right there in the courtroom, holding her as she shook with emotion. "It is over," he whispered. "You are free." Daniel Harper stormed out of the courtroom with his lawyer, his face twisted with rage. But the judge's order was clear and enforceable. He could not touch Olivia now without facing serious legal consequences. The journey back to Angel's Camp was celebratory. Olivia was lighter than Samuel had ever seen her, as if a physical weight had been lifted from her shoulders. They talked about the future with new freedom, no longer hypothetical but real and possible. "I want to expand my sewing business," Olivia said as they rode through the spring countryside. Maybe eventually open my own shop instead of working out of the general store. That is a wonderful idea. You have more than enough customers to support it. And I want to marry you, Olivia said, so quietly Samuel almost missed it. He pulled his horse to a stop, turning to look at her. What? Olivia met his eyes, her expression serious but peaceful. I know I said I needed time, and I still do need some time. But I know now that I want to marry you, Samuel. Not because I need protection or security, but because I love you, because you make me happy, because I cannot imagine building a life with anyone else. Samuel dismounted and helped Olivia down from her horse, then dropped to one knee right there on the trail. Olivia Hart, will you marry me? Not today or tomorrow, but whenever you are ready. I will wait as long as it takes. Yes, Olivia laughed through tears. Yes, I will marry you. Samuel stood and kissed her, pouring all his love and joy into that kiss. Around them, spring wildflowers bloomed in brilliant colors, and the California sun shone warm and golden. It felt like the world itself was celebrating with them. They were married 4 months later in September of 1879, almost a year to the day from when Samuel first found Olivia weeping in the storm. Judge Morrison performed the ceremony in Angels Camp's small church, with most of the town in attendance. Mrs. Patterson cried openly, much to everyone's surprise. Thomas Sullivan served as Samuel's best man, and one of Olivia's customers, a kind woman named Elena Ross, stood as matron of honor. Olivia wore a dress she had made herself, simple but elegant in cream-colored silk. She carried wildflowers, and her smile was radiant as she walked down the aisle to meet Samuel. In her eyes, he saw not the haunted fear of their first meeting but joy, trust, and love. When Judge Morrison pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed Olivia gently, mindful that this was her first kiss as a married woman in a marriage built on love and mutual respect. The congregation erupted in applause. The reception was held at the town's community hall, with food and music and dancing. Samuel was not much of a dancer, but he let Olivia teach him the basic steps, stumbling and laughing as they moved across the floor. She was patient and encouraging, and by the end of the evening, he had improved enough not to step on her toes every other beat. As the celebration wound down and they prepared to return to their cabin, now truly their home together, Mrs. Patterson pulled Olivia aside for a private word. Samuel watched as the older woman spoke earnestly, and Olivia nodded, her eyes growing wet. Later, as they rode home under a canopy of stars, Samuel asked what Mrs. Patterson had said. "She told me she was proud of me," Olivia said softly. "She said I had shown real courage in leaving Daniel, in starting over and standing up for myself in court. She said she wished more women had that same strength. She was right. You are the bravest person I know. I do not feel brave. I just feel grateful. Grateful that you found me that night. Grateful that you showed me kindness really does exist. Grateful for this chance at happiness." Samuel reached over and squeezed her hand. "I am the grateful one. You brought light into my life I did not even know I was missing." They settled into married life with ease, having already learned to live together. But there was a new sweetness to their relationship now, a security that came from public commitment and legal protection. Olivia continued to build her sewing business, and by the winter of 1880, she had saved enough to rent a small storefront in town for her own shop. Samuel built all the furniture for it, a large cutting table, shelves for fabric and supplies, comfortable chairs for customers. The grand opening drew a crowd, and Olivia's face glowed with pride as she showed people around her shop. This was hers, built through her own skill and hard work, a testament to how far she had come from that terrified woman in the storm. Life continued its pleasant rhythm through the seasons. Samuel took various jobs but always made sure to be home for supper with Olivia. They spent evenings planning and dreaming, talking about eventually buying land and building a larger home. They spoke about children, though both agreed to wait a few more years, wanting time to simply be together as husband and wife. In the spring of 1881, Olivia received word through Judge Morrison that Daniel Harper had died. He had been killed in a barroom fight in San Francisco, shot by another man during an argument over cards. Olivia's reaction surprised even herself. She felt nothing. No relief, no anger, no sadness. The man who had terrorized her for years was gone, and all she felt was a mild curiosity about how his death might affect her legal status. "I should feel something," she told Samuel that evening, "but he was already dead to me." The moment Judge Williamson granted the separation, he stopped having any power over my life. "That means you truly healed," Samuel said. "He cannot hurt you anymore, not even in memory." That summer, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. They had not been trying particularly hard to conceive, but had not been preventing it either, both feeling ready to expand their family. When the doctor confirmed her condition, Olivia was overjoyed. "A baby," she kept saying wonderingly. "Our baby." Samuel was equally delighted, if somewhat terrified. "I do not know anything about being a father, and I do not know anything about being a mother. We will figure it out together." Olivia placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "This child will be born into love and safety. That is what matters most." The pregnancy was healthy but not easy. Olivia suffered from nausea in the early months and exhaustion throughout. Samuel took over most of the household duties, insisting she rest as much as possible. He also hired a young woman named Sarah Mitchell to help in Olivia's shop several days a week, ensuring his wife did not overwork herself. As winter approached and Olivia's due date neared, Samuel found himself increasingly anxious. What if something went wrong during the birth? What if he lost her after finally finding happiness? The thought kept him awake at night, even as Olivia slept peacefully beside him. On a cold February morning in 1882, Olivia went into labor. Samuel rode frantically to fetch Dr. Williams, the physician who attended most births in Angel's Camp. The doctor arrived calm and prepared, having delivered hundreds of babies over his career. "First babies take their time," Dr. Williams told Samuel. "Make yourself useful by boiling water and fetching clean linens, and try not to panic. Your wife needs you strong." The labor lasted 14 hours, long enough for Samuel to imagine every possible terrible outcome. But finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard the lusty cry of a newborn baby. Dr. Williams emerged from the bedroom, smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Reed, a healthy, strong boy. And your wife did beautifully." Samuel rushed into the bedroom to find Olivia propped up on pillows, exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle in her arms. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face, happy tears this time. "Samuel, meet your son." Samuel approached almost reverently, looking down at the impossibly small person in Olivia's arms. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was making little snuffling sounds as he rooted against Olivia's chest. "He is perfect," Samuel whispered. "You are perfect. I love you so much." "I love you too, both of you." Olivia looked from the baby to Samuel. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but not reached a final decision. Now, looking at his son, Samuel knew, "What about James, after my father?" "James Thomas Reed, with Thomas for Thomas Sullivan, who has been such a good friend to us." "James Thomas Reed," Olivia repeated, testing the name. "I like it. James it is." The first few months of parenthood were exhausting and overwhelming but filled with joy. James was a good baby, healthy and alert. Samuel marveled at the fierce love he felt for his son, understanding now what his own parents must have felt for him. He would protect this child with his life, give him everything he needed to grow into a good man. Olivia proved to be a natural mother despite her fears, patient and nurturing. She continued to work in her shop part-time, bringing James with her and setting up a cradle in the back room. The customers loved peeking at the baby, and several of the town's older women appointed themselves unofficial grandmothers, always ready with advice or offers to hold James while Olivia worked. As James grew from infant to toddler, the Reed family flourished. Samuel built a new, larger cabin on land they purchased just outside town. The house had proper bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and even a separate room for Olivia's sewing supplies. They planted a garden and fruit trees, building the homestead they had dreamed about during those early evenings by the fire. In 1884, Olivia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Margaret Rose, after Samuel's sister, and because Olivia loved roses. Margaret had her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn chin, and from the moment she was born, she had James wrapped around her little finger. The boy, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and insisted on helping with everything. Life settled into a happy pattern. Samuel took regular carpentry work, building his reputation as a skilled craftsman. Olivia's sewing shop became an established business, known throughout the region for quality work. Their children grew healthy and loved, never knowing fear or violence in their home. Sometimes, usually in the quiet moments before sleep, Samuel would think back to that stormy night in October 1878 when he heard a woman crying in the darkness. What if he had ridden past? What if he had ignored that sound? His entire life would have been different. He would have missed knowing Olivia, missed the love and partnership they had built, missed these precious children. "What are you thinking about?" Olivia would ask, snuggling closer to him in their bed. "About how lucky I am. About how one decision to stop and help someone changed everything. It changed everything for me too. You saved my life that night, Samuel, not just from the storm, but from the person I was becoming, someone who had forgotten how to hope, how to trust, how to love. You gave all that back to me." "We saved each other," Samuel would correct gently. "You showed me what it means to truly care for someone, to build a life together. I was content before I met you, but I was not truly happy. You brought joy into my world." The years continued to pass in a blur of milestones and memories. James started school, proving to be bright and curious like his mother. Margaret learned to walk and talk, her personality emerging as equal parts sweet and fiery. Samuel and Olivia celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, watched their children grow, and remained deeply in love through it all. In 1888, when James was 6 and Margaret was 4, Olivia announced she was pregnant again. This pregnancy felt different from the previous two, harder somehow, though the doctor assured them everything was progressing normally. Olivia was older now, in her early 30s, and her body did not bounce back as quickly as it had before. Samuel worried constantly, hovering over her until she finally snapped at him to stop treating her like she was made of glass. But his worry was not without cause. Childbirth was always risky, and they both knew women who had died bringing children into the world. The baby, another boy they named Daniel William after Samuel's grandfather, arrived healthy in the spring of 1889. Olivia survived the birth well, though recovery took longer than with the previous two. But soon enough, she was back on her feet, juggling 3 children and her business with the same grace she brought to everything. Their home was loud and chaotic and filled with love. James helped his father with building projects, learning the trade from a young age. Margaret followed her mother everywhere, already showing an interest in sewing and design. Little Daniel was quieter than his siblings but watchful and affectionate, particularly attached to his father. As the years passed into the 1890s, Samuel and Olivia watched their children grow with pride and occasional melancholy for how quickly time moved. James grew tall and serious, a responsible older brother. Margaret developed her mother's artistic eye and her father's stubborn determination. Daniel remained the quietest of the three, but also the most empathetic, always aware of others' feelings. One evening in the summer of 1895, when James was 13, Margaret 11, and Daniel 6, the family sat together on the porch of their home watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The children were playing a game while Samuel and Olivia sat close together in the porch swing he had built years ago. "Do you remember the night we met?" Olivia asked, as she sometimes did during these quiet moments. "Every detail," Samuel confirmed. "The sound of the rain, the terror in your eyes, how small you looked huddled under those rocks. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago, like that was a different person entirely." Olivia watched their children play. "And sometimes it feels like yesterday, but always I am grateful for that storm. For the path that led me to you. The best storm of my life," Samuel agreed, kissing her temple, "because it brought me you." As the sun sank below the horizon and the first stars appeared, the Reed family remained on the porch, soaking in the peace of the evening. Inside the house waited all the comforts of home food prepared together, beds made with care, rooms filled with laughter and love. It was a simple life by some standards, not wealthy or particularly exciting. But it was built on a foundation of kindness, mutual respect, and genuine affection. Samuel Reed had offered shelter to a weeping stranger one rainy night, and in return, he had received the greatest gift of all, a love that lasted, a family that thrived, and a partner who challenged and completed him in equal measure. Olivia Hart, who had once believed kindness did not exist, now lived surrounded by it every day. She had learned that love did not have to hurt, that marriage could be a partnership of equals, that she could be strong and soft at the same time. The scars from her past had faded, replaced by the joy of her present and the promise of her future. Years later, when their children were grown with families of their own, Samuel and Olivia would sit together in the same porch swing, now weathered and worn but still sturdy. They would hold hands, their fingers intertwined from decades of practice, and watch their grandchildren play in the yard. "I never thought I would have this," Olivia would say, her voice full of wonder even after all these years. "A real family, real love, real happiness." "Neither did I," Samuel would reply honestly. "I thought I knew what life had to offer, but then I found you and everything changed." Their story became something of a legend in Angel's Camp, the cowboy who offered shelter to a stranger and found his life partner. Young couples would sometimes seek them out for advice, and Samuel and Olivia always told them the same thing: that real love was built on kindness, respect, and the daily choice to care for each other even when it was difficult. When Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1912, at the age of 66, Olivia mourned deeply but without bitterness. They had been blessed with 33 years of marriage, years filled with love and laughter and purpose. He had given her the greatest gift anyone could give, the freedom to be herself and the safety to love without fear. Olivia lived another 8 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren, still sharp-minded and quick-witted until the end. When she joined Samuel in the town cemetery in 1920, their children made sure their graves were side by side, with a simple marker that read, "Samuel Reed and Olivia Reed, beloved husband and wife. love endures. And indeed, it did endure in the children and grandchildren who carried their values forward, in the stories passed down through generations, in the simple truth that one act of kindness on a stormy night could change the course of two lives forever. The cabin where they first built their life together still stood decades later, though it had been expanded and modified by various inhabitants. But the original fireplace remained, the stone Samuel had so carefully placed still holding warmth, and locals claimed you could sometimes feel a presence there not frightening but comforting, like the memory of two people who had loved each other well. Their story was one of hope, of second chances, of the transformative power of genuine kindness. Samuel Reed had been just an ordinary man doing what his conscience demanded, but to Olivia, he had been everything savior, friend, partner, and love. She had been a broken woman fleeing terror, but she had become someone strong, capable, and whole. Together, they had built a life of extraordinary beauty from the simplest of beginnings, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories start with nothing more than one person choosing to see another person's suffering and respond with compassion. In a world that could be harsh and unforgiving, they had created a space of warmth and safety, and that legacy lived on long after they were gone.